The first time Lena Brooks touched Marco Bellini, she left blood on his mouth. Not much. Just a thin red line across his lower lip where her palm had struck him hard enough to turn every gun in the room toward her. The private poker room beneath the casino went silent so quickly it felt as if the entire city above them had stopped breathing. No chips moved. No whiskey glasses clinked. No one dared blink. Lena stood in the center of the room in a black cocktail uniform that suddenly felt too small, too thin, too helpless against the eyes of 20 armed men. Champagne dripped from the silver tray at her feet. Her hands still burned from the slap. Her pulse hammered so violently, she could hear it louder than the bass pulsing through the nightclub above. And Marco Bellini, the most feared mafia boss in Las Vegas, slowly turned his face back toward her. He did not shout. He did not reach for her. He did not order anyone to drag her away. He only touched his thumb to the blood on his lip, looked at it, then looked at her. The men around him waited for death. Lena waited for death. Instead, Marco smiled. It was not kind. It was not soft. It was the kind of smile that made every predator in the room remember. There was something more dangerous than hunger. Then he said calmly, "Lock the doors." The command moved through the room like a gunshot. 2 men stepped toward the exit. Steel bolts slid into place. The hidden elevator at the far wall shut down. The heavy velvet curtains behind the card table were pulled closed, sealing them inside a world of red light, smoke, money, and danger. Lena's throat tightened. She had only been trying to leave. That was how the nightmare had started. 20 minutes earlier, she had been carrying champagne into the private room beneath the Orium Casino, a gold and black palace on the Las Vegas Strip, where billionaires lost fortunes for fun, and men like Marco Bellini made kings kneel without touching a crown. Lena was invisible there. That was part of the job. Smile. Serve. Vanish. Powerful men loved women who vanished after being useful. She had learned that lesson young. Her mother had worked double shifts until her hands cracked. Her father had disappeared when Lena was 17, leaving behind a locked metal box, a stack of unpaid bills, and one sentence written on the back of an old casino receipt. If anyone ever says the name Bellini, run. For years, Lena had done exactly that. She had run from debt collectors, from landlords, from men who thought kindness was an invitation, from every memory that smelled like cheap whiskey and expensive secrets. But that night, when she pushed open the gold-trimmed door to the private poker room, the first name she heard was Bellini. Then she heard her father's name. "Brooks is dead," one of the men at the table said. "Whatever he hid died with him." Lena stopped, so suddenly the champagne glasses trembled on her tray. No one noticed at first. They were too busy watching the man seated at the head of the table. Marco Bellini wore a black suit with no tie, his white shirt open at the throat, one hand resting near a glass he had not touched. He looked younger than his reputation, and more dangerous than every story whispered about him in employee hallways. He had dark hair, controlled eyes, and the stillness of a man who did not need to prove he was powerful because everyone else had already proven it for him. Across from him sat Vittorio Romano. People called him the King, not because he wore a crown, but because half of Las Vegas bowed to him anyway. Romano was older, silver-haired, elegant in a cruel way. He owned casinos, judges, politicians, nightclubs, police captains, and women who thought they were choosing their own lives until they discovered the contracts had already been written. Lena had served him before. He never looked at waitresses unless he was deciding whether to hurt one. Tonight, he was looking directly at Marco. "Your father built your family on loyalty," Romano said. "You are about to destroy it over ghosts." Marco did not move. "Careful," he said. The word was quiet. It still made every man in the room tense. Romano only smiled. "You think Brooks betrayed you. You think he sold Bellini routes to my people. But if you knew what he really left behind, you would have burned this city years ago." Lena felt the room tilt. Her father, Bellini, ruthless, betrayal. Her fingers tightened around the tray. She should have left. She should have pretended she heard nothing. Set down the champagne, gone back upstairs, changed out of her uniform, and disappeared into the neon crowd before anyone could connect her face to her name. But then Romano said, "The girl knows nothing." Marco's gaze shifted. Not fast, not obvious, just enough. His eyes landed on Lena. For 1 second, the red light seemed to dim around them. Lena understood then that she had not been invisible at all. Marco Bellini had noticed her the moment she entered. He looked at her name tag, Lena, then at her face. Something unreadable passed through his eyes. Romano noticed it too, and smiled wider. "Well," Romano said, leaning back in his chair. "Maybe not nothing." Lena backed away. The tray slipped. Champagne spilled across the table. A glass shattered. Someone cursed. She turned for the door, heart exploding in her chest. But a man in a gray suit stepped into her path. "Where are you going, sweetheart?" Lena swung without thinking. Not at him. At Marco. Because he was suddenly in front of her. Silent. Close. Blocking her path with his body like he had moved before anyone else could touch her. She did not know he had come to stop them. She only saw power. Danger. Bellini. Her father's warning screamed in her memory. If anyone ever says the name Bellini, run. So she slapped him. Hard. The sound cracked through the room like broken glass. Now, with the doors locked and every armed man staring at her, Lena realized running had become impossible. Marco took one step closer. She forced herself not to step back. He was tall enough to make the room feel smaller, composed enough to make her panic feel childish. But his eyes were not on the guns. They were on her hand. The one that had slapped him. It was shaking. His smile faded. "What did you hear?" he asked. Lena swallowed. "Nothing." "You're lying." "So are all of you." A flicker passed through his expression. Not amusement. Not anger. Something sharper. Interest. Romano chuckled from the table. "She has spirit. Shame. Those are the first ones who break." Marco did not look away from Lena. "Romano," he said, "say one more word about breaking her." The room froze again. Vittorio Romano's smile thinned. "You would threaten me over a waitress?" Marco finally turned his head. "She hit me," he said. "That makes her my problem." Lena hated the way the words moved through her. My problem. It should have terrified her. It did terrify her. But beneath the fear was something worse, a strange, unwanted awareness that when Marco said it, the men who had been staring at her like prey suddenly looked away. Romano's eyes darkened. "You always did have your father's weakness," he said. Sentiment wrapped in violence. Marco's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Then the lights went out. For one breath, the underground room vanished into darkness. Then gunfire tore through the velvet walls. Men shouted. Glass exploded. Lena screamed as someone grabbed her arm, but before she could be pulled away, Marco's hand closed around her waist and drove her down behind the marble bar. His body came over hers, hard and warm and terrifyingly steady as bullets chewed through the bottles above them. Whiskey rained over her hair. The red emergency lights flickered on. Through the chaos, Lena saw Romano's chair empty. The king had vanished. Marco looked down at her. There was blood on his mouth from her slap, and blood on his shoulder from a bullet graze he had not acknowledged. "Stay down," he said. Lena's voice came out broken. "Are they shooting at you, or me?" Marco's eyes went colder. "That," he said, "is what I intend to find out." Another bullet shattered the mirror behind them. Marco lifted his gun and fired once without looking. A man fell near the doorway. Lena stared at him, horrified. Marco looked back at her. Not apologetic, not cruel. Certain. That was the first thing she learned about Marco Bellini. He did not panic. He did not hesitate. And when danger entered a room, he became the stillest thing inside it. He dragged her through a hidden service passage behind the bar while his men returned fire. The tunnel smelled of smoke, metal, and expensive perfume leaking from broken bottles. Lena stumbled once, and Marco caught her before her knees hit the ground. His hands stayed at her lower back. Possessive, protective, unwelcome. She shoved him away. "Don't touch me." He released her instantly, but he did not move farther away. "You can hate me when you're alive. I don't know you. You know my name. My father told me to run from it." That stopped him. For the first time, Marco Bellini looked genuinely caught off guard. The tunnel lights flickered above them. Gunfire echoed behind them. Still, he went completely still. "Your father?" he said slowly. "What was his name?" Lena lifted her chin. "Daniel Brooks." The silence that followed was worse than the gunfire. Marco's face closed. Every trace of expression disappeared. But something in his eyes changed. Something old. Something violent. Before Lena could ask what it meant, the tunnel door behind them blew open. Marco moved like a shadow. He shoved Lena behind him, fired twice, then pulled her through another door into a private elevator. As it rose, she pressed herself against the mirrored wall, trying to breathe. Marco stood between her and the doors, gun lowered at his side, his reflection fractured around her. He was bleeding through his shirt. "You're hurt," she said before she could stop herself. His eyes met hers in the mirror. So are you. She looked down and saw a thin red line across her forearm where glass had cut her. It was nothing. Marco looked at it like it was unforgivable. He reached into his jacket, removed a folded white handkerchief, and held it out. Lena did not take it. You people killed my father. His hand remained steady. No, he said. But someone wanted you to believe that. The elevator opened into the private garage beneath the casino. Black SUVs waited with engines running. Rain hammered against the concrete ramp leading to the street. Las Vegas glittered beyond it, neon bleeding across wet pavement, like the city itself was wounded. Marco's men surrounded them instantly. Boss, one said. Romano's men hit the south exit. Police scanners are dead. Cameras looped. Marco's gaze never left Lena. Bring the car. I'm not going with you, she said. Yes, you are. She laughed once, breathless and bitter. You think because you have guns, you can just decide that? No, Marco said. I think because someone tried to kill you under my casino, you'll be dead before sunrise if you walk away. Your casino? His expression sharpened. Then he looked toward the glittering tower above them. It used to be. Before she could process that, a black SUV rolled forward. One of Marco's men opened the door. Lena stepped back. Marco stepped with her, not touching, but close enough that she could feel the heat of him. Lena, he said. The sound of her name in his mouth made her stomach twist. Do not make me carry you. You wouldn't dare. His eyes lowered briefly to her lips, then lifted again. I have done worse things tonight for less important reasons. She hated that her pulse reacted. She hated him more for noticing. But another burst of gunfire cracked somewhere above them, followed by the roar of shouting men. Marco did not flinch. Lena did. His expression changed for only half a second. That was all it took. He turned to his men. Move. Then he took Lena's hand. She tried to pull free, but he was already guiding her into the SUV, placing himself beside her before the door slammed shut. The vehicle shot forward into the rain. Behind them, the Orium Casino's gold lights flickered. Then half the tower went dark. Lena watched through the rear window as smoke began rising from the lower floors. Marco made one call. Shut it down, he said. A voice answered on speaker. The entire casino? Marco looked at Lena's bleeding arm. Yes. Lena stared at him. You're closing $1 billion casino because of a cut? His eyes moved to hers. No, he said. Because someone made you bleed in my house. She should have felt disgust. She should have felt only fear. But the way he said it with cold restraint, with quiet violence, barely contained beneath every word, sent something dangerous moving through her chest. Not trust. Not desire. Something more confusing. The feeling of being protected by a man she had every reason to run from. The SUV cut through the rainy Las Vegas night, leaving the strip behind for darker streets lined with warehouses, private gates, and distant desert shadows. Lena kept her body turned toward the window, refusing to look at Marco even though she felt him watching her. He did not speak for several minutes. When he finally did, his voice was lower. Your father worked for my family. Lena's nails dug into her palms. No. He did. My father was a pit boss. Then he was a drunk. Then he was gone. He was a strategist, Marco said. One of the best my father ever trusted. Lena turned then. The interior lights from passing casinos slid across Marco's face, carving him into flashes of darkness and gold. You're lying. I wish I were. Why? Because Daniel Brooks disappeared with something that could have saved my family. The words landed between them like a blade. Lena remembered the metal box hidden beneath a loose floorboard in her old apartment, the one her mother had thrown away after saying it only brought trouble, the one Lena had secretly recovered from the dumpster because it was the last thing her father had left behind. It was still in her closet. At home, Marco saw something change in her face. His eyes sharpened. You have it, he said. I don't know what you're talking about. Lena. No. The SUV slowed at a red light. Rain streaked down the window. Marco leaned closer, not enough to touch her, but enough to make the air disappear. Your father died because he knew who betrayed mine. If he left you anything, every man who wants that secret, buried, will come for you. Her voice trembled with anger. And you? What will you do if I have it? Marco looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, I will ask once. And if I say no? His gaze dropped to the hand she had slapped him with. You already said no to me once tonight. The memory flushed through her body. His mouth bleeding. His men frozen. His smile. What happens the second time? Something almost human moved across his face. Apparently, he said, I become more interested. Lena hated the silence after that. She hated that the fear was no longer clean. At Marco's penthouse, the elevator opened directly into a world that felt nothing like the casino basement. The top floor rose above the strip in black marble, glass walls, low firelight, and silence so expensive it seemed designed to erase ordinary life. Las Vegas shimmered below them, bright and reckless and far away. Marco's men stayed near the elevator. None entered without permission. Lena noticed that immediately. This was not just a home. It was a throne room. Marco removed his jacket and handed it to no one. Blood had spread across his shoulder. He unbuttoned his cuff with one hand, calm as if he had come home from dinner instead of a shootout. A woman in her 50s entered with a medical kit. Boss, she said, then looked at Lena. Her expression softened. Miss Brooks. Lena stiffened. You know me? Marco's jaw tightened. The woman glanced at him, then lowered her eyes. Everyone who mattered knew your father. Lena felt the floor shift again. Marco took the medical kit from her. Leave us. The woman hesitated. Your shoulder. Leave us, Rosa. She went. Lena stood near the glass wall, rain sliding over the city beyond her reflection. She looked fragile in the glass, but she did not feel fragile. She felt cornered, and every cornered thing eventually learned how to bite. Marco placed the kit on the bar. Sit. No. He exhaled slowly. You need stitches. You need a personality. His eyes flicked up. For one dangerous second, the room held its breath. Then he opened the kit. You're very brave when you're terrified. I'm not terrified. You're shaking. I'm angry. At me? At everyone. Her voice cracked before she could stop it. At my father for leaving. At my mother for pretending he never existed. At men like Romano who think women like me are furniture. At you for walking into my life with blood on your shirt and acting like I should obey because you say things quietly. Marco stared at her. The silence stretched. Then he said, Come here, Lena. There was no force in it. That made it worse. She should have refused. Instead, she crossed the room slowly and sat on the bar stool. Marco stood in front of her, close enough that his knees almost touched hers, and took her injured arm with care so precise, it unsettled her more than roughness would have. His hands were warm. His touch was controlled. He cleaned the cut without speaking. Lena watched his face. You do this often? She asked. Clean blood off women I just kidnapped? Did you kidnap me? His eyes lifted. No. Then what do you call it? Keeping you alive while you decide whether to trust me. She laughed softly. That sounds like kidnapping with better lighting. The corner of his mouth moved. Barely. It was gone almost instantly. But Lena saw it. So did he. He looked down and wrapped her arm with gauze. You shouldn't smile at me, she whispered. I didn't. You almost did. That would be unwise. Why? His thumb paused against her wrist. She felt her own pulse jump beneath his touch. Because you would think I'm harmless. Lena looked at the blood on his shirt. No, she said. I would never think that. The intimacy of the words settled between them. Then his phone rang. Marco stepped away. The moment broke. He listened without speaking, his face slowly hardening into something carved from stone. When he hung up, he looked toward the rain-dark city. What happened? Lena asked. Romano has your apartment. Her blood went cold. Marco turned back to her, and he found the box. Lena stood so fast the bar stool scraped against the floor. You knew. I suspected. You used me. No. You brought me here because of that box. I brought you here because men were shooting at you. And the box? Marco's silence was answer enough. Pain flared through her chest, sharp and humiliating. For a moment, she was not in a penthouse. She was 17 again, watching her mother cry over bills, learning that people only cared when they wanted something. You're all the same, she said. Marco's expression did not change, but something in his eyes darkened. Lena, don't say my name like that. Like what? Like you have any right to sound hurt. He went still. That landed. Good, she thought. Let it hurt. She backed away toward the elevator. One of Marco's men stepped forward. Marco lifted one hand. The man stopped. Lena reached the elevator, heart pounding. Am I free to go? Marco looked at her for a long time. Every instinct in him seemed to resist the answer. Finally, he said, yes. The doors opened. Lena stepped inside. At the last second, Marco moved forward, stopping just outside the elevator. He did not cross the threshold. If you leave, he said quietly, Romano will use you to open whatever your father left behind. You said he already has it. He has the box, not the key. Lena's breath caught. She remembered then. The necklace she wore beneath her uniform. A small silver coin her father had given her when she was a child. Too heavy to be jewelry. Too strange to pawn. Too painful to throw away. Marco's gaze dropped to her collarbone. He knew. Of course he knew. Lena reached for the elevator button. Then I guess he'll have to find me. The doors closed between them. She made it 17 floors down before the building went dark. The elevator stopped. Lena's breath caught. Emergency lights flickered red above her. Then a voice came through the speaker. Not Marco's. Hello, Miss Brooks. Vittorio Romano's voice was smooth as polished bone. You should have stayed with Bellini. The elevator dropped. Only 2 feet. Enough to make Lena scream. Then it stopped again. The speaker crackled. I have your father's box. I have men in the lobby. And I have no patience for brave little girls wearing dead men's secrets around their necks. Lena backed into the wall, shaking. The ceiling panel opened. A hand reached down. She screamed again before Marco's face appeared above her. Lena. Relief hit so hard it almost broke her. He dropped into the elevator with a controlled thud, landing in front of her. His shoulder was bleeding through the bandage now. His black shirt wet with it. But his eyes were steady. The elevator groaned. Marco looked up, then back at her. Hold on to me. I thought I was free to go. You are, he said. After we survive the next 30 seconds, the elevator cable snapped. Marco lunged, grabbing her around the waist as the emergency brakes screamed against metal. The elevator plunged, sparks flashing through the dark. Lena buried her face against his chest, gripping him with both hands as the world fell. Then everything stopped. Violently, Marco took the impact against the wall, shielding her with his body. For a second, there was only darkness, dust, and the sound of Lena breathing into his blood-stained shirt. His hand was in her hair. Not possessive now. Protective. Almost shaking. You're alive, he said. It did not sound like a question. It sounded like a man forcing the universe to agree with him. Lena pulled back just enough to look at him. His face was inches from hers. In the red emergency glow, he looked less like a king and more like something wounded pretending not to be. You came after me, she whispered. His eyes held hers. I told you, he said. You can hate me when you're alive. For one impossible second, she thought he might kiss her. His gaze dropped to her mouth. His hand tightened at her back. Then he stopped. His jaw flexed as if restraint physically hurt him. Above them, metal screamed. Marco stepped back. The moment died. But it left something burning behind. They escaped through the elevator roof into a maintenance shaft, while Romano's men flooded the building below. Marco moved first, then reached back for Lena. She almost refused his hand on principle. Then bullets hit the elevator doors beneath them. She took it. They climbed through darkness and sparks, crawling through service corridors until they emerged into the rain on a rooftop helipad. Wind whipped Lena's hair across her face. The city sprawled below, cold and glittering. A helicopter waited with its blades turning. Marco guided her toward it, but halfway there, a bullet struck the pilot. The man fell. Lena froze. Marco shoved her behind an air conditioning unit as gunfire erupted from the opposite rooftop. His men returned fire from the stairwell. The helicopter blades spun uselessly, cutting rain into silver ribbons. Marco pressed close beside Lena, one arm braced against the wall near her head. She could feel the heat of him despite the storm. You're bleeding again, she said. I noticed. You're impossible. So I've been told. Another bullet struck the metal above them. Lena flinched. Marco's face changed. His calm cracked for 1 second, and what showed underneath was not fear for himself. It was fury. He looked over his shoulder at his men. Bring me Romano's nephew alive. The order was quiet. The effect was immediate. His men moved like the city belonged to them. Lena stared at him. Why alive? Marco looked back at her. Because dead men answer fewer questions. And after he answers? Marco said nothing. Lena understood. She should have been horrified. She was. But when another bullet hit near her and Marco pulled her tighter behind him, her body betrayed her with relief. That was the beginning of the worst part. Not the danger. Not the blood. Not even the fact that someone wanted her dead. The worst part was that Marco Bellini made her feel safer in the middle of a shootout than she had felt alone in peace. They did not take the helicopter. They disappeared through an old service stairwell, then through a private tunnel beneath the neighboring hotel. Then into a car waiting in an alley where neon signs reflected in puddles like broken jewels. Marco sat beside her in the back seat, his shoulder untreated, His expression locked away again. Lena held her necklace tightly. The silver coin felt heavier than ever. "What's inside the box?" she asked. Marco looked out the window. A ledger. Money, names, payments, murders, police protection, political favors, and one confession. "Whose?" He turned toward her. "The man who betrayed my father and killed yours." Lena felt the words settle into her bones. "My father is dead?" Marco's silence softened. That was enough. She had known, in the way people know things they refuse to say out loud. But hearing it confirmed stole something from her anyway. Her voice went small despite her effort to control it. "How?" Marco looked down at his hands. "He was found in the desert. No identification, no funeral. My men discovered the truth 2 years later." Lena closed her eyes. The car moved through the rain. She waited for tears, but none came. Maybe grief had already spent itself years ago, in rent-controlled apartments, and cheap diners, and birthdays her father never returned for. Marco spoke again. "He died refusing to give Romano the key." Lena opened her eyes. "The necklace." "Yes." She laughed quietly, brokenly. "I wore it to work because it was the only thing I had left of him." Marco's eyes moved to her throat. His voice lowered. "He kept you alive with it." The car turned off the strip and headed toward the edge of the desert, where the lights thinned and the night became wide and black. They arrived at a hidden safe house built into a private canyon, all concrete, glass, and steel, invisible from the main road. Inside, the silence felt different from Marco's penthouse. Less like wealth. More like survival. A doctor came for Marco's shoulder. He refused treatment until Lena's arm was checked again. She rolled her eyes. "It's a scratch." Marco looked at the doctor. "Check it." The doctor checked it. Only then did Marco sit. Lena watched from the doorway as the doctor cut away Marco's shirt and cleaned the bullet wound. His torso was marked with old scars, some pale, some deep, each one a history lesson written in violence. He did not make a sound. Not when the doctor disinfected the wound. Not when the needle went in. Not when blood slid down his side. Lena found herself gripping the doorframe. Marco noticed. Of course he noticed. "Does it bother you?" he asked. "The blood? The life?" She looked at him. Yes. His expression remained unreadable. "Good." That surprised her. He looked away. "It should." Later, she found him on the balcony overlooking the dark canyon. Rain had stopped, but clouds still covered the moon. He had changed into a black sweater, his arm bandaged beneath it, a glass of untouched whiskey in his hand. Lena stood behind him. "Did my father betray your family?" "No." "You're sure?" "I wasn't always." He did not turn around. "When my father was killed, evidence pointed to Daniel. Roots leaked. Shipments vanished. Men died. My father trusted him, and that trust looked like weakness after the funeral." Lena heard what he did not say. "And you hated him." "I hated the ghost of him." "And now?" Marco finally turned. "Now his daughter slapped me in front of my enemies and became the only honest person in a room full of liars." The words moved through her quietly. She looked away first. "Don't romanticize me. I was scared. Bravery usually is." For a moment, the canyon held them in silence. Then Lena asked, "Why did Romano call you sentimental?" Marco's face closed. She thought he would not answer. Then he said, "Because he knew my mother." Lena waited. Marco looked past her, into a memory. "She begged my father to leave the business. He refused. Romano used that against him. Turned allies. Bought police. Made my father look weak. Then he had my mother killed in front of him." Lena's breath caught. Marco's voice stayed calm. "Too calm. My father died 3 months later. Officially. A car bomb. Unofficially. Someone inside our family gave Romano the root." "And you think the ledger proves who?" "I know it does." "Who is it?" Marco's eyes changed. "My brother." The word landed quietly and shattered everything. Lena stared at him. "You have a brother?" "Had." "What happened?" Marco looked down at the glass in his hand. "I let him live." The confession was softer than she expected. More painful. "He betrayed you?" "I didn't know then. I knew he was weak, angry, jealous. I knew Romano liked to collect broken sons from powerful families. But I didn't want to believe blood could rot that deeply." Lena stepped closer without meaning to. Marco noticed again. He noticed everything. "What's his name?" she asked. "Matteo." "And where is he now?" Marco's mouth hardened. "Sitting beside Romano, calling himself a kingmaker." The wind moved between them. Lena thought about her father dying in the desert to protect a secret. Marco's mother murdered. His father betrayed. A brother spared and turned enemy. All these years of violence circling one truth. And now that truth hung around her neck. She touched the silver coin. I don't know how to open anything with this. I do. She looked at him. Then why not take it? He held her gaze. Because your father died, so no man could. The answer unsettled her. She had expected control. Force. A demand. Instead, he gave her a choice. That night, Lena did not sleep. She lay in a guest room larger than her entire apartment, staring at the ceiling while armed men moved quietly beyond the door. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marco's face after she slapped him. The blood, the smile, the way the entire room had waited for him to destroy her, and the way he had locked the doors instead. Near dawn, she opened her door and found Marco sitting in a chair across the hall. Awake. Still. His gun rested on the table beside him. You've been there all night? She asked. Yes. Watching my door? Yes. That's disturbing. Yes. She should have gone back inside. Instead, she leaned against the door frame. Do you sleep? When necessary. And is it necessary? His eyes moved over her tired face. Not tonight. Something in her chest tightened. You can't keep doing this. Keeping you alive? Acting like I'm your responsibility. Marco stood slowly. The hallway felt smaller instantly. You became my responsibility the moment Romano said your name. My father made me your responsibility. No, he said. Your father made you free. I am trying to keep you that way. Lena had no answer. Because for all his control, all his darkness, all the violence around him, there was no lie in that sentence. A phone rang downstairs. Marco's expression changed before he answered it. By the time he hung up, his eyes were ice. What? Lena asked. Romano released footage from the poker room. Her stomach dropped. The slap? And the shooting, edited. To show what? That you came with me willingly after helping me murder 2 men. Lena stared at him. By noon, every screen in America had her face on it. Waitress mistress in Mafia shootout. Bellini's secret lover? Casino massacre, witness or accomplice? The scandal spread fast. Faster than truth ever did. News anchors dissected her uniform, her expression, the angle of Marco's hand at her waist as he pulled her through smoke. Social media called her a gold digger, a criminal, a hostage, a lover, a liar. Lena watched it all from the safe house living room, numb. Marco stood behind her, silent. On screen, Romano gave a statement in a tailored navy suit, his voice heavy with false grief. Miss Brooks is clearly under the influence of a dangerous man. We pray she comes forward safely. Lena laughed once. It sounded dead. He's painting himself as the good guy. Marco's voice was quiet. He is very good at that. My life is over. No. She turned on him. No? I can't go home. I can't go to work. Everyone thinks I'm either your victim or your whore. The word changed the room. Marco stepped closer. Do not call yourself that. Why? That's what they're calling me. They are not in this room. But you are. His eyes held hers. Yes. The air sharpened. Lena hated that she wanted him to say something more. Something impossible. Something that would make the humiliation stop hurting. Instead, Marco turned to his men. Get me every outlet that aired it. Every producer. Every lawyer. Every owner. Lena frowned. What are you doing? Marco looked back at the screen, where Romano's polished face smiled with sympathy. What I should have done years ago. By evening, the first network retracted the story. By midnight, 3 casino shareholders resigned. By sunrise, a media executive was arrested for accepting illegal payments from Romano-affiliated accounts. And at 8 in the morning, the Orium casino burned. Not with people inside. Marco had emptied it first. But the building burned anyway. Gold windows shattered. Smoke rose over the strip. Helicopters circled. Fire reflected across the city like an omen. Lena stood on the safe house balcony watching the live broadcast. Marco came up behind her. You burned your own casino, she said. It was already his. You said it used to be yours. It was my father's. Romano took it through lies and contracts after his death. And now? Marco's eyes reflected the flames. Now it belongs to no one. She turned to him, shaken. Because of me? He looked at her then. No, he said, because he used it to hurt you. Lena stared at him. The words should have scared her. They did. But beneath that fear was something dangerously close to longing. No one had ever defended her name like that. No one had ever been furious on her behalf. No one had ever looked at her humiliation and decided the world that caused it deserved to burn. "You can't destroy everything that hurts me," she whispered. Marco's gaze lowered to her mouth, then returned to her eyes. "I can try." The silence after that was unbearable. He lifted his hand slightly, as if he might touch her face. Lena stopped breathing. His fingers hovered inches from her skin. Then his phone rang. He closed his eyes for half a second. The moment vanished. When he answered, he turned away. Lena hated the disappointment that moved through her. She hated it so much, she almost missed the look on Marco's face when he ended the call. "What is it?" He turned back to her. "They found your mother." Lena felt the world narrow. "My mother is dead." That's what Romano wanted you to believe. Her mother was alive. Not free, not safe, but alive. Romano had kept her hidden for years in a private medical facility outside the city, drugged and guarded, because she knew what Daniel Brooks had discovered. Lena did not cry when Marco told her. She simply sat down. Then she whispered, "Take me to her." Marco's answer was immediate. "No?" Lena looked up. The room became dangerous in a new way. "What did you say?" "It's a trap. She's my mother, and you are the bait." Lena stood. "Do not treat me like property." Marco's eyes flashed. "I'm treating you like someone who is being hunted. You don't get to decide what risks I take. If those risks get you killed, I do." "No, Marco, you don't." His name changed something. It was the first time she had said it without anger. He went still. Lena stepped closer, every part of her shaking, but not with fear now. "You told me my father died protecting me. You told me my mother is alive. You told me my whole life was built on lies. And now you want me to sit in your beautiful prison while you decide how much truth I'm allowed to survive?" His jaw tightened. "I want you breathing. I want my mother. You walk into Romano's hands, and he will use you to open the ledger." "Then we don't walk in," she said. "We make him think we do." Marco stared at her. Slowly, something shifted in his expression. Not softness. Respect. "You have a plan." "I waited tables for men like Romano for 6 years," Lena said. "Men like him always look at the woman serving drinks and assume she isn't listening." Marco's eyes sharpened. Lena touched the necklace. "So let him underestimate me one more time." The plan was dangerous. Marco hated it. That was obvious, which was why Lena insisted on it. Romano had invited them to the Old Monarch Hotel, a shuttered luxury property near the edge of downtown. Once famous for its rooftop pool, gold ballroom, and politicians photographed with women they later denied knowing. It had been empty for years, or so the city believed. At midnight, black SUVs moved through rain-slicked streets toward the hotel. Lena sat beside Marco in the back, wearing a black dress Rosa had chosen for her and the silver coin against her skin. Marco had not spoken for 10 minutes. Lena finally looked at him. "You're angry." "Yes." "At me?" "At the situation." "That means me." His gaze slid to hers. "If I were angry at you, you would know. I slapped you in front of your men and survived." His mouth curved, barely. "That was different." "Why?" "Because I deserved it less than the men you wanted to hit." She looked away before he could see her smile. Rain slid down the windows. The city blurred. Marco's hand rested near hers on the seat, not touching. Lena noticed. So did he. At the hotel, Romano's men searched them under broken chandeliers and decaying gold ceilings. The monarch smelled of dust, roses, and old corruption. Every step echoed. Romano waited in the ballroom. Behind him stood Matteo Bellini, Marco's brother. The resemblance was cruel. Same dark hair, same bone structure. But where Marco was stillness, Matteo was restlessness. He smiled too easily, moved too much, watched Lena with open curiosity. "So this is Daniel's girl," Matteo said. "The waitress who made my brother bleed." Marco's voice dropped. "Look at her again like that." Matteo laughed. Still dramatic. Romano lifted a hand. "Enough. We are here for business." Lena scanned the room. No mother. Her heart began to pound. Marco sensed it without looking. "Where is Sarah Brooks?" he asked. Romano smiled. "Safe. For now." Lena stepped forward. "I brought the key." Marco's gaze cut to her. This was not part of the plan. Romano's smile widened. "Did you?" Lena removed the necklace. Marco's entire body went still. She could feel his fury like heat beside her. but she did not look at him. If she did, she might lose courage. "I want my mother first," Lena said. Romano studied her. "Your father had the same stubborn eyes. He died with them open?" Romano's smile faded. Marco looked at her then, something like pride and fear warring in his face. Romano snapped his fingers. A screen lowered from the ballroom ceiling. The image flickered on. Lena's mother appeared in a hospital bed. Older, thinner, but alive. Her eyes were open. Lena's knees nearly gave out. "Mom," she whispered. Sarah Brooks turned her head slowly toward the camera as if she heard. Then she said one sentence. "Don't give him the key." The screen cut to black. Romano sighed. "Touching." Lena's fingers tightened around the coin. Marco stepped forward. "You're finished." Romano laughed. "No, Marco. I am Las Vegas. I am the judges who sign your warrants, the police who ignore your bodies, the senators who drink my wine. You are a grieving boy in an expensive suit." Matteo smiled from behind him. Marco did not move. That was when Lena understood. Romano wanted him to lose control. He wanted Marco to draw first, to start a massacre in a room full of hidden cameras, to become the monster every headline already claimed he was. Lena reached out and took Marco's hand. In front of everyone, his eyes dropped to their joined hands. The room shifted. Marco's rage did not disappear, but it obeyed her. That scared Romano more than a gun would have. Lena looked at him. "You call yourself a king." Romano's eyes narrowed. "But kings don't hide behind drugged women and edited videos." Matteo stepped toward her. "Careful." Marco's gun was in his hand before anyone saw him move. The barrel pointed at Matteo's chest. "Another step," Marco said calmly, "and I stop having a brother." "Sis," Matteo froze. For 1 second, the entire story of the Bellini family lived in Marco's eyes. The betrayal, the spared life, the wound that had never closed. Romano watched with satisfaction. "Do it," he whispered. "Prove what you are." Marco's finger tightened. Lena squeezed his hand. "Marco," she said softly. "Not stop. Not please. Just his name." His breathing changed. Slowly, he lowered the gun. Romano's smile faltered. That was the signal. The ballroom doors exploded inward. Marco's men flooded the hotel from 3 entrances. But they were not alone. Behind them came federal agents. Honest ones. Lena had contacted through an old number, hidden in her father's metal box, a number Marco had not known existed. Romano turned sharply. Lena lifted the silver coin. "It wasn't just a key," she said. "It was a transmitter." For the first time all night, Vittorio Romano looked afraid. Then Matteo grabbed Lena. His arm locked around her throat. The room erupted. Marco's face changed into something she would never forget. Not anger. Not fear. A kind of silent devastation. The face of a man watching the only thing he could not lose become a weapon against him. "Let her go," Marco said. Matteo pressed a gun to Lena's ribs. "You always wanted to be better than me." Marco's voice was almost gentle. "No, I wanted you to be better than this." Matteo's jaw shook. "Father loved you. Father loved loyalty. He loved power. He died because you sold him for it." Matteo's eyes flickered. Romano moved toward the side exit. Lena saw it. Marco saw her see it. Their eyes met. In that second, she understood what he wanted her to do, and she hated him for trusting her with danger. Loved him a little for it, too. Lena drove her heel down into Matteo's foot and threw her head back into his face. The gun fired wide. Marco moved. One shot. Matteo fell to his knees, alive, clutching his shoulder. Marco crossed the room and pulled Lena into his arms before she could hit the floor. For one suspended breath, the war disappeared. He held her too tightly. His hand pressed against the back of her head. His body shook once. So subtly. Only she could feel it. "You're alive," he whispered again. This time, it broke. The feared Mafia Boss of Las Vegas, the man who made rooms go silent, the man who burned casinos and lowered guns for no one, held Lena Brooks in a ruined ballroom and sounded terrified. Lena clutched his shirt. "I'm alive." Then Romano shot him. The bullet hit Marco high in the side. Lena screamed. Marco staggered but did not fall. He turned, shielding her with his body, even as blood spread beneath his jacket. Romano stood near the exit with a small pistol, eyes wild. "You should have killed her when she slapped you," he hissed. Marco looked at him. There was no rage now. Only ending. "You never understood," Marco said. That was the moment she became untouchable. Romano fired again. Marco pushed Lena behind a column. Then the ballroom became war. Gunfire shattered chandeliers. Marble cracked. Federal agents shouted. Marco's men advanced through smoke. Lena crawled toward the fallen gun near Matteo. But he grabbed her wrist. His face was pale, twisted with pain. "He'll die for you," Matteo gasped. Lena looked at Marco across the room, bleeding, still fighting, still standing between her and every bullet. "No," she said. "He'll live for me." She struck Matteo with the gun hard enough to break his grip, then ran. Romano had reached the old stage door. Lena followed. Behind the ballroom, the hotel corridors were dark and flooded from broken pipes. Romano stumbled through the service hallway, cursing. One hand pressed to his bleeding arm. He turned when he heard her. "You stupid girl." Lena raised the gun with both hands. They shook. Romano smiled. "You won't shoot me." "No," Lena said. "I probably won't." His smile widened. Then Marco appeared behind him. Blood soaked his shirt. His face was colorless, but his eyes were steady. "She won't," Marco said. "I will." Romano turned. Marco shot him once. The king fell beneath the flickering exit sign of his own ruined hotel. Lena lowered the gun. Marco took one step toward her. Then his knees buckled. She caught him as much as anyone could catch a man like Marco Bellini. They sank together onto the wet floor, his blood warm against her hands. "No," she said, pressing against the wound. "No, you don't get to do this." His mouth curved faintly. "Give orders now, do you?" "Shut up." His eyes softened. Actually softened. It scared her more than the blood. "Lena, don't." "If I don't, you do," she snapped. "You live. You hear me? You live. Because I am not becoming another woman in your tragic backstory." A breath that might have been a laugh left him. Then his hand lifted, trembling slightly, and touched her face. This time, he did not stop himself. His fingers were warm and bloody against her cheek. "I tried not to touch you," he whispered. "Why?" "Because I knew once I did, I would not survive losing you." Tears finally came then. Angry, helpless tears. "You're not losing me." His eyes held hers. "No," he said softly. "I'm afraid you found me." Then his hand fell. Lena screamed for help. Marco survived. Barely. For 3 days, he lay in a private hospital wing under armed guard, while the city rebuilt itself around the truth. Romano's ledgers went public. Judges resigned. Police captains vanished. Politicians denied everything until recordings proved otherwise. Matteo Bellini lived long enough to confess, then disappeared into federal custody with enough enemies to make prison feel like mercy. Sarah Brooks was recovered from the private facility outside the city. She was weak, confused, and alive. When Lena saw her for the first time, she broke in a way she had not allowed herself to break in front of anyone else. Her mother held her face in both hands and cried her name like a prayer. Marco watched from the doorway, pale and bandaged, one hand braced against the wall. He did not enter. He knew some reunions did not belong to him. That was when Lena realized something important. Marco Bellini was not soft. He would never be harmless. He still gave orders that made dangerous men lower their eyes. He still carried violence in his silence. He still belonged to a world that had teeth. But he had learned the difference between possession and protection. And for Lena, he was trying. On the 4th night, she found him on the hospital rooftop garden beneath a cold desert sky. Las Vegas glittered below them, wounded but alive. Wind moved through the small olive trees planted in stone boxes. Marco wore black even in recovery, because apparently almost dying had not improved his fashion imagination. Lena stepped beside him. "You're supposed to be in bed. You sound like Rosa. Rosa is terrifying." "Yes." They stood in silence. Below, the strip burned with neon. Above, the stars looked distant and clean. Lena held the silver coin in her palm. The transmitter had been removed. It was only a necklace again. Only a memory. "My mother remembers you," she said. Marco did not look at her. "What did she say?" "That you came to our apartment once after my father disappeared. You were 22. Angry. You thought my father betrayed yours." His jaw tightened. "I did. She said you saw me sleeping on the couch." Marco closed his eyes. The silence answered before he did. "You left money," Lena said. "Enough to keep us from losing the apartment." "It wasn't enough. It was more than anyone else did." He looked at her then. Rain was beginning to fall, light and silver, though the sky above the desert had seemed clear moments before. "I hated your father then," Marco said. "But I saw you. and I couldn't make myself hate anything that small. Lena swallowed. You watched over us. From a distance. Hidden surveillance? His mouth tightened. Protection. That's a very mafia distinction. He almost smiled. Almost. Lena stepped closer. You scared me. I know. You still scare me. I know that too. But not the way you did. His eyes searched hers. Lena took a breath. I don't want to belong to you. Pain crossed his face before he could hide it. She touched his hand. I want to choose you. There's a difference. Marco looked down at their hands. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, slowly, carefully, like a man approaching something sacred and dangerous, he turned his palm beneath hers and laced their fingers together. I don't know how to love without wanting to protect, he said. I'm not asking you to stop protecting me. His eyes lifted. I'm asking you to stop deciding for me. The rain grew heavier, pattering softly against the stone around them. Marco nodded once. It looked like surrender. From him, it meant more than any confession. I can try, he said. Lena smiled faintly. You said that before. That was about destroying people who hurt you. And this? His thumb brushed over her knuckles. This will be harder. She laughed softly, and the sound changed his face. Not completely. Not quickly. But enough. The feared Mafia boss looked at her like the city below could fall into darkness and he would only notice if she stopped smiling. Then he reached into his coat and removed something small. A folded paper. Lena took it. It was the deed to the Orium Casino property. The burned one. Her eyes widened. Marco. It was built with blood, he said. Yours should decide what rises there next. I don't want a casino. I know. What do you think I want? He looked out over the city. A place where women Lena stared at him. For once, she had no sharp answer ready. The paper trembled slightly in her hand. You burned a casino and gave me the ashes? Marco looked back at her. Yes. That might be the strangest apology I've ever received. I'm not good at apologies. No, she said. You're really not. He stepped closer, his body careful because of the wound, his eyes anything but careful. Lena. The way he said her name now was different. Not a command. Not a warning. A confession. She looked up at him. This time, when his hand rose toward her face, he paused. Waiting. The choice was hers. Lena closed the distance herself. The kiss was not gentle at first. It was too full of everything they had survived. Blood, rain, betrayal, fear, anger, restraint. All the almost that had burned between them since the night she slapped him. Then it slowed. His hand curved against her cheek. Hers rested over his heart. Careful of the bandages beneath his shirt. For the first time, Marco Bellini did not feel like a man trying to own the world. He felt like a man relieved to have found one person he did not have to conquer. When they parted, his forehead rested against hers. Below them, sirens moved through Las Vegas like distant ghosts. Above them, rain washed the city clean in silver lines. Lena whispered, What happens now? Marco's eyes stayed closed. Now, he said, you rebuild whatever you want. And you? His hand tightened around hers. I stand at the door and make sure no one burns it down. Lena smiled. That sounds like protection again. It is. Marco. His eyes opened. But there was warmth in them now, buried deep beneath all that danger. I'll stand outside, he said. That made her laugh, really laugh this time, and his expression shifted again as if the sound had done something violence never could. Months later, the place where the Orium Casino once glittered became something no one in Las Vegas expected. Not another casino. Not a hotel. Not a nightclub. A foundation. A shelter. A legal aid center. A place for women who had been invisible too long to become impossible to ignore. Reporters came to the opening expecting scandal. They found Lena Brooks in a cream-colored suit, standing beneath glass doors where gold letters caught the morning sun. The Daniel Brooks Center. Her mother stood beside her, fragile but smiling. Rosa cried and denied crying. Marco stood behind the crowd in a black suit, surrounded by men who still looked like they could end a war before lunch. He did not step onto the stage. He did not take credit. He did not try to own the moment. But Lena saw him. She always saw him now. Halfway through her speech, a protester pushed through the crowd one of Romano's old loyalists, desperate, armed, shouting that Bellini had no right to play savior. The gun came up. The crowd screamed. Marco moved before anyone else. But Lena did not freeze. She stepped forward, voice steady, eyes locked on the man with the gun. This place was built for women who were tired of being afraid, she said. So if you came here to scare me, You're too late. Marco stopped beside her. Not in front of her. Beside her. His gun was drawn, his face cold enough to remind the city exactly who he was. But he waited. For here. The armed man looked from Lena to Marco and understood the truth too late. The woman was not hiding behind the Mafia Boss. The Mafia Boss was standing beside the only woman who had ever made him choose restraint. Police took the man down seconds later. The cameras captured everything. By nightfall, the image was everywhere. Lena Brooks standing fearless beneath the sign with her father's name. Marco Bellini at her side, armed. Bleeding through a reopened wound, he pretended not to notice, looking at her instead of the threat. This time, the headlines were different. The waitress who brought down a king. Bellini's empire changes hands. The woman Las Vegas could not break. That evening, after the crowd left and the building finally grew quiet, Lena found Marco in the main hall staring at a framed photograph of her father. He would have hated this picture, she said. Marco looked at it. He hated all pictures. You knew him well? Well enough to owe him more than revenge. Lena slipped her hand into his. Marco looked down at it like he still had not gotten used to being touched without fear. Outside, rain began to fall over Las Vegas, soft against the glass. Do you ever miss the casino? She asked. No. Liar. His mouth curved faintly. I miss winning. You still win. He turned to her. There was something dangerous in his eyes. Something tender beneath it. Not the same way. Lena shook her head, smiling. Then she noticed the blood at his side. Her smile vanished. Marco. He glanced down, annoyed at his own body for betraying him. It's nothing. You were shot months ago and still act like stitches are optional. They are inconvenient. You are impossible. You've said that, and I'll keep saying it until you believe me. He stepped closer, and the empty hall seemed to hold its breath around them. You once asked what happens the second time you say no to me, he said. Lena's pulse changed. I remember. I think I know now. She lifted her chin. What happens? His hand rose, not to command, not to claim, but to brush a strand of hair from her face with devastating care. I listen. Lena's eyes softened. That was the moment she knew the ending was not really an ending. A mafia boss did not become safe because he fell in love. A woman did not become fearless because a dangerous man protected her. They changed because love, real love, forced both of them to become braver in different ways. Marco had learned that devotion was not ownership. Lena had learned that accepting protection did not make her weak. And somewhere between a slap in a red-lit poker room and a kiss in the rain above Las Vegas, they had become the one thing neither of them had planned for. A choice. Marco leaned down and kissed her beneath the gold light of the building raised from his ashes and her father's truth. Outside, black SUVs waited in the rain. Inside, Lena Brooks smiled against the mouth of the most feared man in the city. And for the first time in Marco Bellini's life, the empire outside the door mattered less than the woman holding his hand.